Greetings. In this video, we are going to look at the part 4 of the Ganapati Upanishad, word-to-word meaning and commentary. So, continuing from the part 2, the next verse would be Tvajnanamayo Vijnanamayosi. So, the individual words, Tvam, which means you, Jnanamayaha, which means wisdom, Jnanam. Vijnanamayaha, which means wisdom of the higher or highest frequency, the wisdom of realization, the wisdom of Godhood or Atma. Asi, which means are. So this verse, the commentary on it, you, O Lord Ganesha, are the manifestation of worldly wisdom and also the wisdom of the highest degree, the wisdom of realization. You are the very manifestation of all dimensions of wisdom. You are the manifestation of Jnanam and Vijnanam. Next verse. Sarvam jagadidam tvatto jayate. Sarvam, which means everything. Jagat, which means the materialistic world, the observable universe. Ja means jananam, which means to be born. Gat means to go. So Jagat means something which is born, which comes to existence and which dies. So the observable universe. Jagat is different from Vishwam. Vishwam is used for something which is always there, which is not born and which does not die. So Jagat is, for example, the observable universe, the galaxies, the manifestation of Godhood, the manifestation of consciousness in the physical matter, which comes into existence, which is born into existence, and which will dissolve one day. So that is Jagat. Idam, which means this. Tvattaha, which means from you. Jayate, which means is born. So the entire universe which comes into existence and which dissolves is born from you. You are the very source of the happening of the Big Bang, the creation and everything. Next verse. Sarvam jagadidam tvattastisthati. Sarvam jagadidam tvailayameshyati. Sarvam jagadidam tvayi pratyeti. So sarvam, which means everything. Jagat, as explained earlier. Idam, which is also explained. Tvattaha, which is also explained earlier. Tisthati, which means sustained and to nourish, to sustain something and nourish it. Tvayi, which means into you. Layameshyati, which means dissolve, right? So something which is born has to go back to its source. So something which dissolves or gets destroyed. Destroyed is a very negative term that is used dissolve here. Prati, which means towards. Eti, which means approaches. So the entire universe is sustained and preserved by you. It undergoes dissolution through you. It also merges back into you as they are born from you. So Lord Ganesha here is the very source of the happening of the universe. The universe is born from Lord Ganesha and will eventually dissolve back into him. Next verse. Tvam bhumirapo nalo nilo nabhaha. Tvam, which means you. Bhumihi, which means earth. Apo, which means water. Analo, which means fire. Anilo, which means wind. Nabhaha, which means ether. Now, this is a very deep verse. See, as per the Taittiriya Upanishad of the Yajur Veda, absolute consciousness or Godhood, the state of Godhood, condensed into ether. When Big Bang happened, the first form taken in the physical realm is ether, which is the subtlest form of the elements. Ether is Akasha. So ether condenses to form wind, wind later condenses to form fire, and fire condenses to form water, and water condenses to form earth. So absolute consciousness, Godhood or God, the state of God, with the initiation of creation, condenses and becomes more gross, from subtle to gross. So ether is most subtle because it exists as vibration. Now if you look back at the first part of this Upanishad series, you will look at the origin of the Vedas, and you will hear the explanation on how the Vedas were downloaded in the form of vibrations, because the entire universe is made up of vibrations, and all forms of knowledge of the universe are in the form of vibration, mantras, because the entire universe is a reverberation. So this reverberative force, the element responsible for it is ether. So that is why they say you can download the knowledge of the universe from the Akasha as Akashic records or Akashic reading. So Akasha is the ether. So this is the most subtle element. It cannot be perceived by our sensory components. It exists as a vibration. So this is how the rishis, the ancient sages, tapped into Akasha to download all the Vedas in the form of mantras. So ether, it can only be perceived as sound energy. Now ether condenses to wind, a more solid component than ether. Wind is slightly more gross. Wind can be perceived by sound and touch. You can feel or perceive wind with touch and sound. Now wind condenses to form fire. Fire is slightly even more gross. Fire can be perceived through sound, touch and form. Fire is the first among the elements which has a form, which you can visually perceive. Now fire then condenses to water, which is more gross than fire because it can be perceived through sound, touch, form and taste. So water has an additional attribute which is taste. And then water finally condenses to earth, which is the most gross element. Earth is the most gross, for it can be perceived through sound, touch, form, taste and finally smell. So earth has an additional component, smell. So in essence, all these elements are different expressions of the absolute consciousness or God or Lord Ganesha as per this Upanishad. The Lord is verily all the elements for this reason. This truth is similarly expressed in other portions of the Vedas, interestingly. So Lord Ganesha in this verse, when we mean that he is earth, he is water, he is fire, he is wind, he is ether, because all these elements are just different forms of divine consciousness, different forms of God existing in different frequencies or different planes, from the subtlest to the most gross. Next verse, Tvam chatvari padani. Tvam, which means you, chatvari, which means four, vak, which means the speech component, padani, which means steps or levels of speech. So in this verse, we are talking about the four types of speech as per the Vedic tradition. Again, the four types of speech moves from the most gross to the subtle. Number one, Vaikhari, which refers to physical speech which occurs through language. So the vibration of the oral cavity produces the necessary sounds which form words, which is heard and interpreted neurologically by the listener. So gross language, speaking through mouth. Number two, the second form of speech is Madhyama, which means mental speech. Communication that occurs telepathically. Sometimes people can transmit an information or communicate through the mind. So it works at the mind level. Pashyanti, which is the third level of speech. Pashyanti, which means to see. Now this is in reference to the seers of the Vedas. Now again, if you have watched the first part of this series, you would have noticed that the Vedas were downloaded by different sages, different rishis, and the term that we give to these rishis is mantra drashta, which means literally seers, one who sees. So these rishis were referred to as seers because they literally saw the entire Vedas. Now, don't we have in our English language when we actually quote a deep experience with sight? For example, we say, he has seen all forms of hardship in life. So when we use the word seeing, it means he has undergone in depth what he has experienced. And it does not literally mean that he has literally only seen something which is with his eyes. So that is why the rishis were called seers, because they literally saw the entire mantras. They saw the very form of the Vedas. So, and number 4 is the fourth level of speech, which is referred to as para. This is the wordless communication. This is the communion with the absolute consciousness, when you and Godhood, the state of Godhood, attain unison. When you lose your total identity and realize that you are verily God, that you are Atma and that Atma is God. So in this state, in the state of complete union, right, there is a communication which is beyond the frame of time and space matrix. It is a state. It is actually the speech of absolute silence. So the last form of communication or language or speech is absolute silence. Through silence, all forms of truths can get just revealed. Next verse. Tvam gunatrayatitaha tvam avasthatrayatitaha tvam dehatrayatitaha tvam kalatrayatitaha. So here, tvam, which means you, guna, which means qualities, the qualities of sattva, rajas and tamas, traya, which means 3, atitaha, which means beyond, avastha, which means the states of body awareness. So the states of being awake, dreaming and deep sleep. So the state of being awake is referred to as Jagrata or Vishva. The dream state, which is referred to as Tejasa or Swapna. Deep sleep is a state which is referred to as Nidra. And the gunas, Sattva, Rajas and Tamas. So this is in, we can give a deep explanation to it, but let's put it simple. Sattva refers to the state of divinity, Rajas the state of actionhood, and Tamas the state of passivehood, right? So Tamas is like the state of sleep, Rajas is a state of activeness, and Sattva is the state of divine bliss or divinity. For example, when you are sleeping, when you're resting, or when you are feeling passive, then you are in the state of tamas or ignorance. When you're in rajas, when you're overly vibrant and active, then you are the stage of rajas. When you touch a spiritual experience, for example, when you go wow at the sight of a beautiful sunrise, when you go empty, when you attain a deep state of peace and awareness and bliss, that is the state of sattva. So Lord Ganesha is beyond all 3 gunas. He is beyond all states of body awareness which we saw, the state of being awake, the state of dream state and deep sleep. So this is the state of pervasiveness, that state of pure consciousness. Lord Ganesha, being pure consciousness, surpasses. He does not belong to any of these categories. He is beyond all states. Next, Deha, which means body. Dah yati iti deha, which means that which can be burnt is body. Kala, which means time. Traya, which means 3. Again, here Lord Ganesha is beyond the three forms or three dimensions of the body, and he is also beyond the three states of time. So the three forms of the body are the gross body, the mental body, and the causal body. The gross body is that which constitutes the physical frame of the muscles, nerves, blood vessels, and etc. The mental body is the linga deha. It is the subtle body. The mental body is the subtle form which holds all the bio-memory, bioenergy, and karma. All the memories of you is held as the subtle body. The third is the causal body or karana sharira. This is the geometry formed from the vibrations. Only with vibration can there be formed. Again, rooting back to the first part of the video, we saw on how the entire universe is a reverberation. And when there is sound energy, when there is a vibration, there is a form. So the entire universe in its reverberation gives rise to many forms in its subtle level, like a geometry, right? So if we want to create a beautiful portrait, we first draw basic lines. So those basic lines are like the geometry, and those basic lines are what we refer to as the causal body, the underlying geometry which gives shape to your physical body and so forth. And these three states of time are Vartamana, which is the present state, Bhuta, which is the past, and Bhavishya, which is the future. So Lord Ganesha is beyond the three states of the body. He is beyond the three dimensions of time. So in this whole verse, we see as the Lord Ganesha, who is beyond the three gunas, beyond the three bodily awareness, beyond the three bodies, and beyond the three frames of time.